My name is Lionel Ferrer. I'm a teacher trainer for global language training. I'm speaking to Harold Bratovich, the academic director.
Hi Lionel, how are you?
Very well, thank you.
Okay.
Harold, the students are coming to the end of the course. What would you say are the most important messages that you would like them to take away from what they've learned?
Well, I think we've put all the information that a teacher who begins their teaching career needs to know to be able to walk into a classroom and teach. But what I would like our students to take away from this training is, number one, lesson planning, which is extremely important, and number two, building students' confidence. I think those two things are very important when you begin your teaching career. Knowing that you have to build your students' confidence and that you have to plan your lessons very well, especially when you're just starting your teaching career.
You mentioned lesson planning, and this is a central part of the course.
Yes.
But it's true to say that when you do actually get into the real world and you become a teacher, it gets a lot easier, doesn't it?
It does get easier, and I remember my first day teaching. It was definitely challenging a while back, almost 20 years ago, but it does get easier. The majority of institutions have a program and have a textbook or something that you follow that makes it easier. But definitely lesson planning is extremely important. The more you plan, the better your lessons will be, the more confident you will be, and the more confident your students will be as well.
Yes, and you mentioned the textbook, the course books.
Right.
Most language institutes will have a course book.
Yes.
And this will take a lot of the work
Yeah.
out of the planning for you, won't it?
Yeah, the good thing about publishers is that they make textbooks or course books that come with a complete guide for the teacher and helps them to prepare the lessons a lot faster and better, especially when you're a new teacher and you need to prepare your lessons. And sometimes you don't know where to start or how to begin. Even though we've provided our trainees or our students with the necessary information, sometimes when you walk into the classroom or you're assigned a group of students, you don't know where to begin. So yeah, definitely the course books help.
Yes. And certainly when a new teacher is starting out on their career, they would very much keep to the course books. But I think supplementing materials becomes more and more important as they become more experienced.
Yeah, definitely. Well, I think experience definitely helps. But it also, I think, has to do with the teacher's creativity or the person's creativity. If you're a creative person and you really love teaching, which you'll find out when you start doing it, then the more love and the more passion and dedication and creativity that you put into your classroom, into your lessons, whether you're a new teacher or an experienced teacher, it will definitely show. And so I would say, be creative when you begin teaching. Don't just stick to the course book and do other things. Bring additional games and activities that will make your lesson a lot livelier and better and less monotonous. And I think monotony is something that happens even to a lot of experienced teachers.
Yes. And making the tasks and the activities relevant to the students that you're teaching.
That's really important. I think all tasks and all activities should be relevant to our students' daily lives. If things aren't relevant, that they're not real, and then they end up just being boring. And this is where your students will lose focus on learning the language.
Yeah. How important is it to know about your students and about the motivation that the students have for learning English?
Yeah, that's very important. I think getting to know your students, learning about them as much as you can. Something that I do when I begin my lessons is I always ask my students, when I get a new group of students, I always ask about them, and I ask them where they're from and where they work, and if they're married or single, do they have a family, about their family, about their jobs. And I think learning about them lets them know, I care about you as a person, I care about you as my student, and I want to know a little bit more about you so that I can help you through your language learning process.
Yes, I have a form which I get them to fill in on the first lesson, so a needs analysis, talking about their interests, what type of music they like, and things like that.
That's important, what they like, their hobbies, etc. Yes.
But key to teaching, I think, is knowing what their motivation, why they're learning. Are they going to be tourists?
Yeah.
Are they going to be business people?
Right. Are they obligated to come to class?
Or if they don't want to be there in the
Or
first place.
exactly, yes. Which you will find sometimes. The majority of people, I think, are generally motivated to learn the language, but you will find sometimes teenagers who are forced to be in the classroom.
Yes. A central part of learning English is learning vocabulary.
Right.
How important do you think vocabulary is for a
Well,
student?
I think learning vocabulary is extremely important. When I teach, I always bring 5 new words every day. And I know that students really appreciate it when I bring new words, because they're hungry for new words. And I think the more vocabulary that your students know, the more they're going to be able to communicate. And so I always bring 5 new words, and I always categorize them. So I choose a category, job related, or I don't know, things in the classroom, or furniture, fruit, vegetables, always in a category, and I always bring new words. It gets more challenging as they progress,
Yes.
as their level progresses. And it's sometimes okay to ask them, what kind of vocabulary do you want me to bring?
Yes.
And that way you're going to find students who are a bit more interesting.
Yes, I think we've both come across the type of student who will come with a copy of the Oxford Dictionary and
Yes.
take a word at random which will
Yes.
never be used in their
Yes.
life,
You do
and say
find
they
this.
want to learn that.
Or they'll bring a list of 50 words.
Or a list of 50 words they want to learn every day. I always think a maximum of 10
Yes.
words a day.
Yeah, definitely. I will always teach 5 because I know that at least 5 more are going to come up during the lesson.
Yes.
So I bring 5 words and I work on pronunciation, I work on the meaning, of course, and then I present it in a context so that they know how to use the word and when to use the word. And then I work, having students repeat the word at least 2 or 3 times,
Yes.
so that they know how to pronounce it.
And using the words in context. I think it's been proved that a student needs to use a word 20 times before it actually becomes part of their vocabulary.
Yeah, I agree, yes. Yeah, learning 50, 20, 30 words is definitely not the way to really learn vocabulary. They may memorize them for a few weeks, but then later on, more than likely they won't remember those words.
Being able to use the words
Right.
in a context.
Yes.
What would you say to a student that comes to you and says, how do I improve my vocabulary?
Well, what I always say to them is, well, learn the words that I'm working on at the moment. I think reading definitely helps. Reading reinforces the language that you presented to your students, in this case being vocabulary. Seeing the word again and again in a context is definitely going to reinforce that learning process.
Historically, grammar has been a central part of English language teaching. How has that changed recently?
Well, I think we're right now in a transition period where teachers are starting to break away from the old traditional grammar translation method, which has been around for many, many, many years. And I think teachers are learning about teaching based on the communicative approach and building communicative skills. And little by little, I think they're learning about it. I think grammar is important, and we should definitely teach grammar, but it should be focused on developing communicative competence rather than just learning grammar for grammar's sake.
Yes, and again, coming back to the needs of the actual student, teaching them the communication that they actually need in the situations that they're likely to come across.
Right. It's going back to the real world requirements. I mean,
Yes.
people need to be able to speak, understand, read, and write. And we know that just teaching grammar formulas is not going to build communicative competence. We know that.
Okay. You talk about communication or communicative teaching. What exactly does that mean?
Well, I think what teachers need to understand is that we need to build our students' communicative skills, and those are being able to speak, understand, listening, reading, and writing. I think if we build those 4 skills, even from the very basic levels, we're able to build our students' communication skills. And that's what we need to focus on, is having our students be able to communicate with a native or a non-native speaker. We know that more than likely they're going to be communicating with a non-native speaker because of the difference in the number of native and non-native, but I think we need to focus on building our students' communication skills, all 4 skills at the same time.
And how do we do that in the classroom?
Well, I think, well, if you use a course book, then it's a lot easier just following the activities, because these course books work on and have activities on speaking, listening, reading, writing, vocabulary, grammar, etc. But if we don't, then we need to develop activities that are reading and writing, speaking and listening, or all four at the same time. And I think we've provided enough activities and examples in the training and in our course where they're able to see how to develop all four skills at the same time.
And it's central to get them communicating with each other and moving away from this teacher-centered traditional classroom.
Definitely, I think that's what we need to do. We need to move away from the teacher-student activities where it's focused in the classroom and the activities are centered around the student and not the teacher. And I think our teachers, our graduates, need to understand that it's not about them using the language, it's about the students using the language. And that they need to speak less, and the students need to speak more.
Yes.
And I think that's also something else that our teachers need to take away from our courses. How can I get my students to communicate and so that I speak less and my students speak a lot more?
Yes, increasing the time, increasing the STT, reducing the TT.
Yes, exactly. Teacher talking time and student talking time. We need to increase our students' talking time, definitely.
Okay, thank you very much indeed.
Okay, thank you, Lana.